A Déraciné is someone who has been uprooted from where they belong. Say, for example, if a human child was stolen from their crib and raised as a fairy instead, you would say that that person is a Déraciné.
Aren't you excited? You're going to be a fairy and live in the world where time stands still, where nobody can see what you're up to ever again.
It sounds quite sinister when it's put like that, doesn't it? Déraciné is an upcoming PSVR adventure title by FromSoftware, and I can just imagine my viewer retention dropping as soon as I mention it's an exclusive VR game, but don't leave right away. Here's my take on this game, and I'm curious to see if you agree. So, the videos that you love to watch on this channel exist because of Miyazaki's fragmentary method of storytelling. The stories of Dark Souls and Bloodborne are just basically puzzles that we put together and tell, and they're far, far richer for it. So, considering it's been confirmed that Déraciné will follow this exact same method of storytelling, when you think about it, who better than FromSoftware to design a mystery adventure story? If you don't intend on purchasing a PSVR just to play this, don't worry, because I'll be here covering the story on my channel so you can experience the game through me when it releases. In Déraciné, we play as an unseen fairy, exploring a boarding school frozen in time, and when you touch an object or a being, they'll briefly spring into motion, providing exposition or progression to help you piece together their story. Sadly, our character is completely invisible to them, and, quote, no one will ever see what we're up to. But Miyazaki hopes that we're going to feel a sense of joy or happiness as we convince the pupils here that we actually do exist. This gameplay demo at E3 had players searching the academy for a type of sleep-inducing herb, and it was in all kinds of random places, but once you found them all, the character intended to put them in a soup as a prank, which would make the students pass out if they drank it. We're quite a mischievous character, really, although I don't know if poisoning and drugging people counts as mischief, but hey, in contrast with something like Bloodborne, Déraciné is supposed to be a somewhat endearing game from the outset, although the game is expected to have some really heavy, thought-provoking themes as well. And here's where it gets really interesting. So Miyazaki's been saying that Déraciné draws a lot of inspiration from this 19th century poet named Fiona McLeod, whose poems have these really, really heavy themes of sorrow and isolation. But Fiona's poetry also heavily references supernatural Celtic folklore, and I sort of dove into that folklore when I was researching it, and there are some really fascinating creatures and stories in there, many of which have clearly influenced Déraciné. For example, I learnt about the Airshi, a supernatural race that are sort of comparable to fairies or elves. On the surface, a lot of fairy tales paint the Airshi as childlike, mischievous beings, but there is a really dark side to their race, one that is creepy and downright malicious. They're not just innocent, fairy-like beings. I'll give two examples, both of which overlap directly with Déraciné. First, the story of the changeling children. Hundreds of years ago, it was believed that if you didn't watch over your child or take measures to ward off the fairies, then they might steal your baby and replace it with one of their own. This was done for pretty malicious reasons most of the time, like using the human child as a servant. And in the trailer for Déraciné, we see a child who is supposed to be excited at the prospect of being raised as a fairy. Kind of sounds like she's been swapped. So there are some parallels with the changeling children. Second, there's even this black cat in the trailer, which is possibly a reference to the cat Sith, another creature of the Airshi. The cat Sith was a black cat that some believed was a witch that could transform into a cat and back 9 times. And according to some Scottish folks, the cat Sith could steal a soul from a corpse before burial, which was why a lot of burial rites had people making a lot of noise and distraction at the time. And finally, the most damning piece of evidence, it's a common belief that the Airshi this fairy race reside in an invisible world that coexists with the world of humans, just like the world of Déraciné, where we are an invisible being that can interact with humans and their world. So, the game will apparently consist of 8 chapters, each about the children at the boarding school. And I know that so many people in the comments are going to be saying that this is nothing like FromSoftware, but FromSoftware actually does have a long history of really quirky titles, just like this one, not the least of which was a game called Echo Night, which was this mystery adventure game in the exact same genre as Déraciné. And Miyazaki says as much. He says that they're using this as an opportunity to revisit their past while also learning about VR and taking a chance and experimenting on it with a smaller scale project, basically. It's not what a lot of us were hoping for, but it definitely sounds like this is going to be healthy for the studio's creativity. And like I said before, if they can apply their storytelling methods to this genre and have it work, I think that's really good for them as a studio, because their storytelling methods are, bar none, the best in the industry, in my opinion. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see what Déraciné has in store. Speaking of stores, I also wanted to remind you guys that Humble Monthly has just refreshed, and you should check it out. It's basically this bundle that gives you a bunch of really, really well-priced good games. This month features 2 games that I really liked for just $12. There's A Hat in Time, which is this fantastic platformer that's on par with Mario Odyssey in many ways, and also Conan Exiles, which looks like it's a ton of fun to play with friends. For $12, you get these games instantly, plus a ton of other games at the end of the month. This video isn't even directly sponsored by them, I just wanted to let you know. The link in the description does support me, and it also supports charity too, if you're interested. But I'll see you in the next video, which is Prepare to Cry.